Today, I want to talk about how important emergency funds are and how I've used them to take a sabbatical to coast fire and stay home with my kids. So let's talk about it. In the last video, I discussed some of the key things that allowed me to quit my job to stay home with the kids and pursue coast fire. So one of those things was emergency fund. I want to talk about how instrumental that's been in my financial journey to this point and how it continues to play a key part in my finances. Having an emergency fund is absolutely critical for preventing yourself from going back into debt when unexpected emergencies happen. So, first thing we did is we got 1 month's emergency fund before attacking consumer debt, car loans, student loans, credit cards. Basically, we use this any discretionary income at all. We ate beans and rice and beans. Uh, did not go out to eat at all and just saved to try to get the emergency fund as fast as possible. Once having that, I can't tell you how much benefit that has beyond just covering emergencies. It gives you breathing room, helps you sleep at night, which is huge. So if you right now do not have emergency fund at all, you're not alone. Nearly 40% of Americans could not cover $1,000 emergency. 30% can't cover a $400 emergency. That's nothing. That's like a big visit to Costco, stocking up on food for a month. Like, that's not a lot of cash. So the hard truth is you've got to get tight on your budget. You've got to spend less than you make and set aside enough to cover your emergency fund. And that itself has a compounding effect, not just on the interest you earn. I highly recommend you put your savings in a high yield online savings account. I personally use Ally and I love them. Once you have a significant emergency fund saved, that gives you the liquidity to negotiate better deals, not only for expensive things like paying cash for uh, services, for like home repairs, stuff like that. You can get better deals paying cash. You just have to ask. Another thing, better deals for car mechanics. You go to, probably won't work at a dealership, but if you go to a local mechanic shop, you could probably negotiate a better deal paying cash, like physical cash, not using a credit card, because credit cards have ATM processing fees that the mechanic has to pay, and he knows that. Paying cash, they will usually share some of that savings with you, which can add up significantly, especially in an emergency scenario. The other big thing emergency funds allow you to do, negotiate, right? Negotiate, give you leverage to negotiate for higher pay. So quite literally, the rich get richer. So whatever you can do, I know it's hard. Food's high, bills are high, gas is high. I understand it is very difficult to save up an emergency fund. But the sooner you can set aside any amount of money and start amassing an emergency fund of 3 to 6 months or more, that starts unlocking huge potential for you. You're able to save more and make more when you have a cash buffer. I know there's a lot of critics that say, you know, you lose purchasing power by having all your money in a savings account, which is, there's some truth to that. Inflation is very real. You do lose purchasing power. But the benefit of having 3 to 6 months to potentially even 12 months, I think far outweighs the cost of inflation. And it helps you sleep better at night. It makes emergencies, instead of being a freak out panic crisis, it makes it an inconvenience. Let me tell you about a personal time when having a significant emergency fund really saved us. It was probably in 2018. We just recently bought a house. So we put a decent down payment on a modest starter home. Nothing fancy, 3 bedroom, 2 bathroom, 1,400 square feet. I want to say we put about $10,000 down. I made sure that we still had a 6 month emergency fund after paying the down payment, and that's very critical. You don't want to burn all your cash on a down payment house if you're looking to buy a house. Make sure you still have reserves because the inevitable always happens. Murphy's Law is out to get you. But I used a small portion, made sure after paying down payment on the house, we still had 6 months emergency fund. About a year or so, probably 8 months after buying the house, my wife got T-boned, completely totaled her just paid off brand new Subaru. That same week, our HVAC went out. So the heat, I forget what it was like the exhaust fan, the heat coils in the furnace went out. And we're using electric space heaters to heat the house. So I had to go out, pay cash, buy a bunch of space heaters. Our electric bill was crazy that month. Then we also had to pay for a whole new furnace, which at the time, small house, fortunately, it was about $6,000. Then that same week, our water heater went out. So in the same weekend, car got totaled. Wife had to work, wasn't able to work because she was recovering from the accident. Our furnace went out and water heater went out. And we had a newborn baby. So imagine being out of a job because you just got in a car accident. Your car is totaled. The furnace went out. It was just beginning of winter. Using space heaters, which is the least efficient method of heating your house, and water heater going out all in the same weekend, right? Any new parent would be having a freak out. That would be so stressful. But fortunately, we had a significant savings. I was able to cover all that. We did use some of our emergency fund to pay cash for a car while we waited for the insurance check to come in. So we're able to go out and get like-for-like replacement for our car and paid cash for it while we waited for our insurance check to come in. We were able to pay cash for a furnace, which was big, and that actually, we actually spent a little extra to get the high efficiency upgrade because we didn't want the standard efficiency. And got the water heater replaced. I did the water heater myself, but it was about $600 for the water heater. That was huge. Took a crisis situation. It was just a minor inconvenience. We had to spend a weekend, go out shopping for a new car. I had to spend the next weekend replacing the water heater. We got HVAC contractors coming in to replace our HVAC. It was huge. Having cash there was huge. And then we went back to rice and beans, beans and rice, and rebuild our emergency fund. That's the key. You have to maintain a cash balance. Maintain a significant emergency fund to cover life's unexpected emergencies. Happens all the time. So you might be wondering, how do you save up an emergency fund? Well, there's some key areas you have to focus on your budget. First of all, don't sign up for a car payment or rent or mortgage that consumes too much of your pay. I understand that's difficult, right? Rent and mortgages are very, very expensive right now. But before you make a purchase that ties up a huge portion of your income, think through how much margin you have in your budget. You need to be able to save as much of your income as possible. If all of it's going to a mortgage payment, that's a really tough spot to be. So when you're making a purchase, instead of going for the maximum that you can afford, try to scale back. And that gives you so much margin and freedom to invest and save. We've always tried to maintain margin of about 20 to 30%. So I never sign up for a long-term financial commitment that I know is going to sink too much of our discretionary income. Another big area that you can save money in is food. We all got to eat, and there are expensive ways to do that and not so expensive ways to do that. Now, the budget-friendly ways don't necessarily have to be unhealthy. We've done a lot of home-cooked meals that are healthy, delicious, and inexpensive. And I think I'm going to start maybe doing a couple of videos to go through some different recipes I do that are fun, the kids love it, and easy and inexpensive. So stay tuned. Might try to see if I can link it up here. Haven't done that yet, but hopefully I can get the link to be right about there.